PNR with Adam R. This episode of 3 PNRs featured on the UnX Network. Welcome to 3 PNR. I'm your host, Adam R., and with me on this episode is the one and only Cristina Gomez from Shifting the Paradigm. Cristina, how's it going?
Hey, Adam. How you doing today?
Good. I don't know if it's disclosure coming. Have you been reading this stuff?
Oh, man, I feel like it's every day. We're getting a little bit closer, at least how the news is perceiving it. But I'm not really too sure how it's all going to turn out in 2022.
I think it's going to be exciting. I'll tell you why in a minute. Before that, let's get into this. What puts Cristina Gomez on the path of the paranormal and ufology? What got you here?
Got me here. My dad, he's a big inspiration. He was a huge fan of The Twilight Zone. Probably one of the best TV shows of all time from the late 1950s, early 1960s. And I grew up in a generation where, I grew up with the cell phone in my hand. I was born in 99. So for me, and I think for my generation as well, like getting information is incredibly easier, if so much easier than all the previous generations. And so when it comes to like television, movies, the internet access, hearing other people's commentary on it, that's really what got me started. But if it wasn't for my father, who is so adamant with Star Trek and the Twilight Zone, I don't think I would be as enthusiastic as I am today with the topic.
Well said. For me, it started in childhood. And in childhood, there's this curiosity. And so you'd spoken to Whitley Strieber, right?
Yes.
And as a kid, my mom read the book Communion, and then we watched the movie, and it scared the hell out of us. It's because we were watching it at night, and our dog jumped on the couch, and that's it. Right out of our skin we came. So it starts there. Then, you hit your 20s and your teens, and you kind of like, whatever. I played pool. I was involved in boxing and other sports and whatever. And 2017 rolls around, and those videos come out, and that's it. For me, it's done. You can't unsee that. That's undeniable proof, in my opinion. For as far as being unidentified, what's steering it? I don't know. But yeah, for you, that's great that you got started with your dad. He got you influenced to doing it, because I watch your show and you do a great job. You treat it like a news station, and that's appreciated.
Thank you so much. And you know what? I couldn't have said it better myself about what you said when it comes to children, adults, and then 2017. And talking about kids, for those that are listening that have kids or that have nieces and nephews, when you reach the age of like 4, 5, 6, it's when you hit the why stage. Mom, why? Why is the sky blue? Why is the sun yellow? Why this? Why that? And it can be a really frustrating time for the adults, but for the child, they are just so curious. They want to understand to the best of their ability of how the world works. But the issue is the parents, they're so frustrated. They're like, can you just shut up? Stop asking why? And even though it might sound kind of funny now, for children, and you'll probably see this in your own life, you stop asking why, because one, you're scared of being told no, you're scared of rejection. And the older you get, you begin to pretend that you know the reason why to how things work. And the older you get, you go through school, you go through college, you start your adult life, that curiosity for the majority of people really dies down. And in this field, when it comes to the paranormal, the supernatural, or even the UFO phenomena, you need to have that curiosity. You need to ask questions, even if they've already been asked 1,000 times. It doesn't matter. You need to be asking those questions that really push you forward to wanting to know the answer. Because if you just keep pretending, oh yeah, I know what ghosts are. They're not real. Or aliens are coming. Oh yeah, that's cool. I already knew that. That makes life, one, incredibly boring. But the second reason is, when it comes to this, no one has the answers. We can keep looking to the best of our ability, but in this point in time, no one really knows what's going on.
Agreed. And that's the beauty of curiosity. And I say this a lot. Today's science started with yesterday's theory. Yesterday's theory began with a childhood curiosity. You have to be a curious person. You have to be the one. Why? I got to know why. Because if you don't go out there and discover the answer why, you're not going to form a theory, and it's never going to translate to science. You can't have one without the other. It's impossible.
It is. And when it comes to scientists as well, it's kind of a touchy subject in some respects. I mean, now we have the Galileo project, which is fantastic. But a little bit before that, scientists, they have to be very careful on in which aspects they ask why, in which topics, because these are people that get funded by rather large corporations or private funding. And if the private funders or whoever's giving them money doesn't agree with where they're asking why, they're not going to get funded. Does that make sense? So yeah. I feel like right now with the Galileo project, you have Avi Loeb, who is asking the big questions that other scientists are still kind of pushing aside as ridiculous, maybe in the outskirts of thinking it's ridiculous because they're not getting the funding for it. Maybe on the inside, they're like, I wish I could do what Avi's doing, because he's asking those big questions without any embarrassment. And he's having a ginormous backing that are not only funding him, but also that are encouraging him to find those answers and make his data public on what they find of if there is extraterrestrial life just outside of planet Earth.
And I applaud him for that. I, in fact, commend him. I've seen him on a couple of programs. You have to ask why. And that's the biggest problem with scientists, pretense anyway. What ends up happening is you have this curiosity, then you get these degrees, and then you don't want to be shunned by your colleagues. And that's unfortunate, because some of the greatest things ever invented came from, wild imagination. Think about years ago. If you went back in time and explained to people what Bluetooth is, they'd look at you like you're crazy. Like, what? Yeah. And that's my thing with the gray aliens. I don't know if you heard my theory, is that they're an advanced biomechanical robot with an uploaded consciousness, the grays anyway. And I think their telepathic abilities is really like an advanced form of Bluetooth. I think the eyes are scanners and cameras and sensors. And there's a taller gray alien that if you look at I always base things on today's technology. And some years ago, I watched a concert with Tupac, and that guy's been dead a while. And it looked like him on the stage. That's yesterday's technology for us. Imagine advanced technology from whenever from now. So you have to make room for imagination, because what you imagine now can very well translate to reality later. Like you and your dad. You watch Star Trek, you see these little flip things, are talking to people or looking at them. Back then, that was crazy talk. Now it's standard practice. It's called FaceTime. So...
It's a really crazy thing. And that was honestly not that long ago. The fact of how fast our technological development has grown is unbelievable. It truly is. So what the future holds is going to be insane. And you mentioned something about gray aliens potentially being, I guess, in a sense, AI. It could be very possible. There are quite a few stories of eyewitness accounts, at least allegedly, of people saying that you see grays with multiple different alien races. It's not just one. And then you can hear stories. You can literally read books on this. Again, these are alleged accounts. We simply do not know if this is true. But there are people saying that, yeah, it's like these gray aliens are actually working for all these other races. And wouldn't it be smarter? Okay, let's bring this into human perspective. Wouldn't it make a lot more sense to send robots or drones to Mars, which we already are doing right now, Venus, or even other planets in distant galaxies before sending ourselves, right? Obviously, we're going to do that because we simply don't understand what is happening in those other galaxies, how our bodies would react if the atmosphere is poisonous or not, right? Well, these beings, whoever they are, they probably have the exact same mindset that they would send their drones, their AI, whatever, and pass it on to Earth. And even Avi Loeb has had this exact conversation, which he even spoke about for our future in space, which just recently happened, a few weeks ago, a month now. And he said that exact thing. It makes sense to send AI out in space, out anywhere, to collect the data before we send ourselves.
Agreed. And, on Mars now we have rovers and this little helicopter, but if we had the ability to send a bipedal version of ourselves there, it would be able to accomplish more. In a heartbeat, we'd do that. and we'd want to model after us, and we would definitely put the main computer in the head and the eyes and the sensors, right? So like you said, I always view things from a perspective of like what we have now versus what it did that you attach your imagination. What do we have now? What can I do to make it really cool? And that's how I imagine things. And that always puts me over the edge for that. I had someone encounter me once and they said something to the nature like, well, why are there so many different shapes of UFOs and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? And the explanation to them is simple. Like our cars, we have, buses, trucks, trains. Each one's going to have its own reason for being built, right? They're not all going to be the same. The Tic Tac, that been here. Cristina, I've read about this thing long before David Fravor spoke about it. It's described as cylindrical, the cigar shape. I mean, in the Wild West, this is being seen. So it's parallel to our normal, right? That's all it really comes down to. But the stories remain the same throughout the dawn of time. It's just now we have sophisticated equipment, expensive planes up there, and they're easily going to detect these things. So let me ask you this. Now we have private industry going up, the space race, the billionaires club. I think in the next 10 years, we're going to know more because these guys aren't going to stay quiet. If they see something, that's a YouTube viral video. They could care less. So yeah, I'm thinking in the next 10 years, we're going to know plenty more about what this is. What do you think?
I mean, I hope so. I might have to hold you to it. I'll probably have to call you in 10 years. I'm like, dude, it's happening. It's happening right now. Or maybe it could be less, or maybe it could be longer. We simply don't know. But when it comes to the space race, you're right. Because they are privately funded, they're not working with the government, at least to my knowledge. And that might not be the case. I simply don't know. But with that, right, when it's private, you have rights over what data you can released to the public. And with people such as Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, I mean, they have a rather large ego attached to them. So wouldn't it be exciting to be like, guess what I just found? I found alien life. Before NASA, before SETI, before everything else, it was me. So it's very possible, and I'll make sure to follow it along on YouTube or on Twitter or something. Yeah, I mean, when it does come out.
If Bezos found alien life up in space, the first thing he's doing is contacting he's like, all right, I'm going to make a show. We're going to make millions. I mean, this he's wealthier than the government by a mile, so he doesn't have any real obligation to speak to them. And if he found, let's say he goes to space and his next destination's blah, blah, blah in the middle of nowhere and he finds alien life, he's sending camera crews and he could give a damn what the government's going to say otherwise. Because for him, that's another $1 billion. He knows that channel, the Bezos alien channel, it's going to be a hit. Everyone's going to register. Even if you don't believe in aliens, you're locking in. I mean, it's undeniable that. What have you learned? A doubt. What have you learned in this last year? Because I see you do a lot of interviews. You speak to a lot of people. Like for me, when I first started this podcast, I had, especially with paranormal, like for me, it was like, well, when you die and the computer turns off your brain, that's it, game over. But I've evolved thoroughly since I started doing this and all the interviews, mostly the off podcast interviews. And as far as extraterrestrials, I had my set theory before, and that's evolving too with the more I speak to people. So what have you learned in the last year that's got you locked in?
Our perception is constantly changing. And I think it's beautiful that we don't stick to a very stagnant mindset from 10 years ago, 50 years ago, and so on and so forth. So I started podcasting about a year ago and I went in blind. I knew very little about the topic. I was always enthusiastic about it, but just because you might be interested in a topic doesn't actually mean that you know what's going on in present day and what happened in the past, if that makes sense. So I've been learning a lot from people that I've spoken to, but also with my other show, Mysteries with a History, where I have to kind of like binge all the information I can get for each episode because each show is it's a very different topic. And for me, it's a very fast way to catch up because I feel very, very behind. I'm working with people, or I guess interacting with people that have been doing this for decades. And they're like, oh, you don't know about this, or you don't know what I'm saying. And I'm like, no, I am so new. I really have no idea. So So, I mean, there are some topics, some stories that are incredibly famous, and I'm just now learning about it. So something that changed my perspective in the year, I guess, would be literally everything. I was very, I'm going to be honest with you. Okay. I did not know about the 2017 article until this year. That's how behind I was, because, the reason to why let me back up. Let me tell you why I'm so behind. Okay. Before I get like these wide eyes and they're like, what? You didn't know about that? Okay. Well, first off, when the 2017 article came out, I was in high school. Okay. And I did not care about anything other than just trying to literally pass high school and not be called out by my teachers. Like, that's all I cared about. So, but then when I had entered college and I moved very far away from home, I was thinking, you know what? I think I can definitely get into this topic. I have a lot of free time on my hands. Let's do this. Now I have no free time. I do not sleep because I'm constantly trying to catch up with the topic. But again, I went in blind, knowing practically nothing except the excitement of, oh my gosh, this story is so cool. I mean, that's about it. And then maybe Project Blue Book. Okay. Like that's how embarrassing it was from when I first started. But here's the thing. No one starts out knowing everything. They might lie to you and say, oh yeah, I knew all this information when I came out of the womb. Like, I am the coolest.
The chosen one.
This is not the case. So it's embarrassing now talking about it, but it's the truth.
I think it's good that you didn't know anything. I think it's great because, one, you're very professional and you have a very news-esque kind of approach with your show. And we need people like you. It's needed. Like, you have to have a fresh mind, knew nothing. They're going to learn. And that's an open mind. And they're not going to be, in other words, you don't have all your eggs in the basket from 20 years ago. You're currently getting in. And now, and your fresh perspective is needed. It's a necessary thing. So I commend you on doing it.
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, the big reason while we're on this topic is there are already a lot of UFO podcasts, and now more than ever after the 27 article came out, I mean, people are like, I am totally on this. But by that time, it seems like when I was jumping into the topic, I was trying to listen to podcasts, trying to like get a feel for it, but they were always using jargon or barely touching on topics that I had nothing to know about, that I didn't know anything about. So my show is for people that are like me, that don't know anything about the topic, but that want to learn. So it's geared for my generation, like high school kids, college kids, those in their early 30s, or those that just simply are diving in and don't know where to look. I am touching all of the topics from the ground up.
And it's a good thing. And, it's a professional, you're giving a professional introduction to unknowing minds, and it's needed. When I first heard about the 2017 thing, I was in a pool hall. I was shooting pool. And a friend was like, you see this? And this is the point of my life where I was like, yeah, UFOs aren't real. Because I've never witnessed anything. I've always had been fascinated, but I'd never witnessed anything. And when they showed me this on the TV, I was like, God damn it, I knew it. So, and then the pandemic hits, and I'm sitting home, can't go shoot pool, can't do nothing. And I'm watching documentaries. And then I find myself arguing with the documentaries about their thoughts. Right. And so I was like, I want to be able to speak to people, start a podcast. And, I started this, 3 months ago? 3 months ago, I started this. And I've learned, I can't tell you how much I've learned in 3 months. And I did approach this, I'll be honest, where I felt like I have the upper hand here, man. I'm going to use logic. But then again, when you review these cases and you read the studies and you talk to the people, logic seems to slip away a little bit. You have to make room for something that's greater than us. And the big thing with the paranormal and ufology, let's be honest, we're questioning our mortality by wondering these things. At the end of the day, that's just what it comes down to, right? Are we alone? Because what does this all mean? Versus the paranormal, where do we go when we die? A lot of it's questioning mortality, plus it's your curiosity, that combination. And it's a healthy thing to view things from perspectives you would otherwise not, view it from. You have to make room for it. I approach nothing with filters on, and I don't judge anyone. I don't think there's any bad information. I just think you have to learn how to filter correctly, take it in. And I think you do a great job of that, by the way.
Thank you. And you're right. When it comes to this topic, it's very difficult to decipher what's truth and what's fiction. And in this topic, it's hard not to have bias, but you're going to have to try your best not to have bias and to have very little opinion, just because, again, you really don't know what's truly going on. You really don't know what is fact and what isn't. And the more people that you talk to, you're right. It kind of, that like logic or that kind of questioning can sometimes slip away, and you're thinking, I have to open my mind even wider to all of these possibilities and even things that I currently cannot comprehend or that science can currently not back up. Even though it's very, very difficult, even for myself, I'm a lot more scientifically minded than jumping into just belief. But in this topic, I've seen even myself grow in the aspect of being more lenient with stories. Even though I might not be on the full bandwagon, at least we're having the conversation and both sides are respectful to listen and to talk and to hold a conversation with the person that's having these encounters or even telling the encounters.
Right. You know, I had a conversation some time ago with Margie K. Shout out to Margie K in the UNX network.
Margie.
I had a conversation with her and a couple of her colleagues, and, you know, some of the stuff she'd spoken to me about was a little fantastic, but when I actually read further into it, because prior to speaking, I did hear about remote viewing and the CIA's involvement, but then you read more about it and you're like, holy shit, there's a lot going on here. This is being utilized by our government way more than being spoken publicly. And I think if the government would take a step back to listen, let's just disclose some of this. It's from the 70s or whatever. I bet you people that have witnessed really great things that are in higher positions of employment would step forward because they'd feel comfortable. Now, the government's saying we're not crazy, so I can speak about this. It's really hard for me to cast doubt on anybody because recently I'd spoken to some psychologists and some other people neurology they focus on. And in these studies, these people get head injuries or they have something traumatic happen in life. I just spoken with another parapsychologist, and your brain starts to compensate. And we don't use 100% of our brain. You know, it's not to its full capacity. And when you start to compensate, like even in your body, like you hurt your leg, you start using your left side more, you'll start using muscles in that side of your body you didn't use before. Same for the brain. And I think these people open channels up, and that's why more people witness things more than others. They're more perceptive. I have to believe.
That's what it's all about. It's all about perception. Have you seen the movie Lucy?
I did. That movie freaked me out a little bit.
It's a fantastic movie. And in that case, she was using drugs to enhance 100% of her brain, to utilize 100% to the point where she was able to see practically parallel timelines, different timelines, and being able to almost manipulate time as well. It was a rather insane movie, and what we only use maybe 5-10% of our brain, and we think that everything that we see is as it is. Well, when you're so involved in the topic, you begin to realize that maybe some things that you simply cannot see, it doesn't mean that it's not happening.
Right. You know, I'm glad you said that about the brain and using it. So when you look at the images of the cosmic web, and then you look at images of the human brain and the neuropaths, there's such similarity there. And I've shared this just recently. I kind of think that this is, gearing towards the paranormal. I think Earth is a proving ground. This is where we are now. And depending on how we behave here, we're either going to be recycled here to do better, or you might have done some great stuff here. You get recycled and you're here again to continue that good work. And/or you go to the next chapter, or wherever that may be. The cosmic web and the same way you look at fiber optics, I see a lot of similarities. That with the brain as well. Think about when you're thinking and you're talking, like right now, your brain's using there's electricity in your brain that's sending these signals out, and it's all at pure energy, just pure energy. And to the point of that movie, Lucy, that's really what that was. She was utilizing the full potential, the energy of her mind and body. Incredible stuff.
It is. I really, really enjoyed that movie. And ones that are similar, there's one that's going to be coming out that I literally just watched the trailer for today, and it's called everything all at the same time. I'm forgetting one word, but the trailer just came out. The movie's coming out next year, which is like in a few weeks. But it's a rather similar kind of storyline, but instead of this woman using 100% of her brain, she's able to access multiple parallel universes of her own life, and then she's able to access all of her skills from all those parallel worlds into one body to help with whatever her mission is of like killing the evil villain or something. But what I'm getting at is, that sounds kind of wild, but what I'm getting at is, with movies that are coming out today and even talking about being able to utilize a lot more of your brain, it would be fantastic to know that it's possible. And again, with this entire topic, there's no such thing as anything to be impossible. Everything is possible. It's just all about perspective and perception. I
agree. So in your time doing this, and I'm finding it, and I'd spoken to Steve Murr about it. He's a parapsychologist from the UK. I'm seeing a lot of parallels between ufology and the paranormal. A lot. Are you coming across that?
Yes, there have been some accounts from some stories that I have encountered where you can't have one without the other. Now, I have spoken to certain researchers such as Micah Hanks, who's also on the program KUNX. He is not only a Sasquatch researcher, but also a ufologist. And he was telling me, I had him on the show. I've had him on the show multiple times. He's a fantastic guy. And he was telling me from his own research, from his own perspective, he doesn't see a correlation between Bigfoot and UFOs. He just seems that it's possibly just a coincidence that maybe these two happen hand in hand at the same time. Now, there are other accounts that I've spoken to other researchers and also done my own research from articles and online as well, of people believing that Bigfoot, for example, while we're on the topic, kind of works more as, and I guess in a sense, as a slave, as maybe the Greys would in the conversation that we had, to help with the other entities.
Right.
Now, is that truth? Again, these are just merely alleged accounts, and I cannot place all of my eggs in the basket and saying, well, yes or no. We don't know. But from the stories that I've encountered so far, and again, I am so new to the topic that I have still so much research to do. But from the few stories that I have encountered, there are quite a few where even with ghosts as well, they're working hand in hand with UFOs. When I had interviewed Whitley Strieber, I asked him a similar question, and the conversation ended up going where in his cabin where he had his encounter, he had stated that people that were also entering the cabin to have their own experiences, they would see their passed away loved ones before encountering the others, as he classified them, instead of extraterrestrial or alien or whatever you want to call them. They're practically all just different names for the same thing. And I asked him, why do you think that is? Why do you think if these extraterrestrials are manipulating these figures of these dead loved ones, what is the purpose behind that? And he said, well, I have no idea, but possibly, and just maybe, Cristina, maybe they are just trying to connect with humanity, right, through loved ones, because we know how powerful emotions are. And now I'm no longer paraphrasing it. I'm talking to you.
Right.
But we know how powerful our emotions are. And we also know how our emotions not only affect our actions, but also affect our perspective. It is so much easier to tell your deepest, darkest secrets to your loved one versus someone that you might not like, or someone that looks frightening to you. Maybe these extraterrestrials, based off of Whitley Strieber's story and accounts, maybe these entities, at least some of them, because apparently there are so many different races, maybe some of them are trying to make themselves more approachable by demonstrating loved ones versus just coming in raw, right? Like these creatures that could look totally terrifying to us. Like, for example, giant praying mantises. I'm sorry, that's mortifying. Okay.
Yeah, I see that. That thing's getting, by the way, I see that it's getting shot.
Sorry, I shouldn't be laughing, but like they're scary. Okay. And like my worst fear is flying cockroaches. And now if I saw a giant one, they're like, we come in peace. I'll be like, I don't care. I do not care.
Yeah.
I cannot interact with you.
I agree with you. You know, that blows my mind. That's a different perspective entirely. You know, first let's start with this. Bigfoot. Every time I hear Bigfoot stories, it gives me pause, you know? And I was really, I'm going to have to talk to Micah. Eventually I'm going to get him on and speak to him because, you know, he would be the source for me because these shows on TV ruin that entire thing for me. Sounds like nonsense, you know? It's always these people. I don't want to bash people. It's always these people. They just look like they're pure hunters. And I'm thinking, you have these rifles. How do you not have proof? If I was a hunter, there'd be Bigfoot on the table behind me, you know? But that being said, a friend of mine brought something to my attention and it gave me pause again. He's like, you realize that there's a certain group of apes that we discovered till like, I think he said the 80s. And I was like, no, it's not possible, right? We've been out there every inch of Africa. We've been on it, but it turns out, yeah, there was a group of gorillas that were in mountains that we had no idea they were there for forever. So, and those are large pack creatures. It's not like there's that one large individual. There's a group of them. So it gives me some idea that there's a potential that something like that can hide in the vastness. So again, I'll speak to Micah on that one because I really need someone to help me along with the Bigfoot thing. Second, though, the ghost. So now, Cristina, you and I are on a ship, right?
Okay.
And we travel to another planet and we see these beings. They're pretty smart. They're throwing rocks at each other. They're playing with swords. They have complex languages, society. We're going to watch this. Let's see how let's watch the evolution of these things. You know, we won't even let them know we're here, right? It's National Geographic space. And so we're observing these things and we look down and we see a ghost and we're like, what the hell is that now? So now we're really intrigued. Not only are we seeing these beings down there, but there's something that's maybe there or is there. We're not sure. We're going to watch. And so the parallel with the ufology and the paranormal, in my opinion anyway, by the way, I don't speak from science, these are just, it's my imagination in the darkest hours thinking of crazy nonsense, you know? I imagine that, like, if you look at Skinwalker Ranch and places like it around the world, it seems that they're studying that phenomena as well. And we're just in the mix of it. There's billionaires that have been a skinwalker and they're like, well, we have all this stuff and they always move the cameras. I'm like, well, sounds to me like a higher intelligence is watching and they're removing your stuff so they could be the ones to observe. You know, you're in their petri dish. What the hell are you doing in there? So that's the one thing that I see the major parallel in. And the orbs, that's pretty consistent in both cases, which in my opinion, again, I'm not speaking the facts here. I think the orb is like their drone or like a recon thing that's going to observe ahead of them. And that's why whenever there's a paranormal thing at someone's house, they're like, well, I saw an orb. Well, an advanced race is curious too. They're going to send something to watch this. You can't be the only one. So that's my personal thoughts. I'm not sure what you think of that, but that's how I think.
And I can't say you're either wrong or right, but what I can say is, and bringing in some archaic knowledge from the Hindu tradition, is in some respects, when these people are encountering ghosts, or I guess orbs, because in some respects we don't know which one is the other, for certain sadhus that can interact with ghosts, and again, this is from Hindu tradition, they believe that what we might perceive as orbs, just like one kind of light, and we even hear ghost stories of like, you can't really see the figure, but you kind of just see like this flowing ball of light, right? Well, they're saying it's very possible that it's actually the solar plexus, one of the brightest chakras in the body that can, I guess, in this realm, the only part that can manifest while here, that day-to-day people can see. That would be my best explanation, and I'm not too knowledgeable on that either, but I have heard those stories. I have read multiple books that kind of cover that. And you know what? It could possibly it could possibly be one answer out of many with this topic. And I'm going to keep saying this over and over again. Anything is possible. And that's what is so exciting about this. And I'm not the person that's going to say, I have all the answers. Please give me $1,000 and I will make your dreams come true. I will tell you everything you need to know for an extra $1,000. So it'll be $2,000 in total. Okay. All right, cool. No, I'm not going to do that because I don't have the answers. Right. Nobody does. So anyone that tells you that they do, you better be running the other way.
Yeah, honestly, because if they know everything, they'd be on TV with a government. They wouldn't be at your local, Walmart saying, "Look, man, give me a couple grand, I'll tell you everything."
Your local Walmart.
It's always the guy. I swear to you, every time I go to Walmart, there's someone there that's the wisest person on the planet about something. And because I look like me, I think people are like, I'm going to try to talk to that guy. I don't know. I don't really look very inviting, so it's kind of strange. But
it's okay, me neither. When I'm out in public, I'm like, please do not look at me.
No, it's different. You're a beautiful girl. You're a beautiful girl. It makes sense for you to be approached. Me, I look like that guy that, he might have a problem. But for whatever reason, they wanted, hey, man, where'd you get these tattoos? Well, it's a mystery. I don't know.
Well, I can tell you those that have a lot of a ton of tattoos that look the scariest, or like even bouncers or bodyguards, they tend to be some of the nicest people that you would never expect to be nice. And usually they have like really small dogs.
Agreed. I don't have a small dog, but I'll get one. But the point, so here's the big thing for me. And by the way, the chakra thing, I have to read about that now. So you did that. That's new to me. So when we end tonight, you're going to give me some books to reference for that. Right. Abductions. This is a good one for me. I've spoken to a lot of MUFON investigators and directors and then private investigators. And there is a significant dip from starting in like 2000. I wrote it down, Cristina. I'm stupid. 2009 till current times, the rate of abductions seemed to be dropping. And I had to ponder on that for a while. And thought to me was, is it possible that the only time they really need to abduct you in current times is when it has to be a physical procedure, right? Like a chip or whatever it may be. Because now, in my house right now, there are endless microphones and cameras and all sorts of listening devices. They don't really need to abduct anymore to observe you, right? We made it really easy for them. So I think when I hear that these numbers have dipped down, I don't think it's that we're not so interesting. It's so much as that we did everything we could to make it so, all right, we can just turn the TV on now. We can watch Planet Earth, see what these crazy people are up to. That's what I think. But so for you, abductions, anyone you've spoken to or learned about, do you find that to be, it's still going pretty popular, or is it fallen down a little bit?
Well, first off, abductions are a really touchy subject, to be honest, right? Because you have stories where people say that they have been probed, they have been abducted, and then a few months later, a few years later, they're like, oh, I'm just kidding. I really wanted the attention. That's a total lie. Then you have others that have had allegedly true encounters that have scarred them for the rest of their life. Then you have those that have literal proof, that have these things in their body that cannot be seen by x-rays, but you can see it literally protruding out of the skin. Okay. Well, you know what I mean by protruding. You can see the figure, but it's still in the body. So it's really difficult to hear the stories and that there's not evidence to back it up. Right. Now, I've looked into it where to my knowledge, and from the research I have done so far, which is not a lot, but it's some, that the abductions were highest during the 70s and 80s, I believe. Please correct me if I'm wrong.
You're absolutely on point with that, by the way. So go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I was sweating, but I'm sweating a little bit less now. So that was kind of the biggest time. And then I have heard the account of saying it had died down. The reason to that, maybe like what you said, it could be right. Maybe we're simply doing all the work for them, making it really easy for them. Or maybe it could be something else entirely. Here's a really good example. all of us are on our phones all the time. We're practically always hypnotized. We can walk across the street with the phone in our hand, not looking up once, and we will not get hit by anything. Like, that's how amazing we are when it comes to our cell phones.
Right.
What if, and this is, I'm just pondering, okay? What if maybe we're just not realizing it like we used to? What if maybe we're just not as in tune with our environment as we used to be 20 years ago? Okay. Do not quote me on this. And because again, I'm not sure, but I think that could be maybe a potential explanation, is maybe the abductions are still happening at the same rate, but we're just not paying as close attention to see if it's happening to us.
It's a good point. And to that, and to add to that, by the way, their technology is advancing like ours. So who knows what they're doing? Like, you think about it, we're not using the same technology from the 70s ourselves. Why would they? You know, like, if they find what works, like when someone said, well, why did they crash in the desert if they're so sophisticated? Well, you think lightning won't affect them the same way? There's still this thing called physics, you know? And it's, so yeah, like you said, I think what you said is interesting. That makes a lot of sense to me. We're definitely blind to our 360, which meaning your surroundings these days. I'm not. Maybe that's why I don't get any, you know, I don't see ghosts. I don't see, maybe that's why, because I don't really rely on my phone heavily. But I think you might be right. And then you consider the idea that their technology is advanced even further. And for all we know, it's still happening. And they've learned us so well. They know exactly what to do to make it a non-physical thing now. You know, Travis Walton, famous case, right? Travis Walton did what I would do. He ran to the ship because he had to see it. That's what I do, by the way, Cristina. I see something, I run at it. No questions asked. I'm bringing the camera. Hey, everybody, you got to see the footage. I might not make it back, but I found it. In National Geographics, when we're studying the animal kingdom, and let's say like a group of lions, and we don't get involved. Even if we see one of the cubs being attacked by another predator, we can't. It's part of nature. We can't get involved with that. Because, by the way, we're National Geographic Earth. I think that's what we're under, is surveillance, right? For study or funsies, whatever. And so if we hit one of those animals with our car, we are then obligated to help that animal and heal it, because we did that. Travis Walton got hit by the car and they had to fix him. And that's where I think his case comes from, personally, anyway.
And that's what he had said himself later on in much later interviews, years after his encounter. He kind of reflected back on it and he said, you know what, maybe now as I look at it, they weren't as scary as they used to be. Maybe I was just at the wrong place at the wrong time. And that is a very possible explanation. Yes, they can, for many, right, believe that they can surveil us at any point in time. But when you begin to affect the environment or mess with the species, which I guess would be us in this respect, right, you're going to have to fix what you messed up. Yeah. Other than that, you're going to keep your distance and you're just going to observe and nothing more.
Yeah. You know, you got these grays, the smaller grays, ones I think are biomechanical robots, uploaded conscious. And then you got the larger ones that are probably the actual biology, and they're sitting somewhere and they're, you know, with their advancements, they could see multiple planets for all we know anyway. When we're talking here, I'm going to imagination, and they're sitting there. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I was saying they're sitting there and they're like, well, what are you going to watch today? I'm like, I'm going to watch Earth. I'm bored of the other stuff's too smart. I want to watch Earth. It's fun. Crazy stuff happens on Earth. We're gonna watch them for a little bit. What were you gonna say now, Chris?
I was gonna say, have you ever seen the movie Childhood's End?
No.
Okay, I recommend it. It's kind of similar in a respect of what we're talking about, but there was just one word that you said, now it passed my mind, but that really hits on the movie. And this movie was made in the early 2000s, and I'm just going to briefly talk about it.
Yeah.
But it's pretty much about an alien species that comes to Earth and wants to have a very peaceful conversation. However, they were never going to show themselves, at least not until they believed that the humanity was ready to see them. And so they try to find some human ambassadors to kind of talk for them and saying that the alien race comes in peace, everything is fine. We just need to warn you that your children are going to end up leaving you. And humanity's like, oh, these people are crazy. We got to see what they look like, this, that, and the other. It's a 3-part series, by the way. It's so good. And
That's
I'm going to spoil it.
Zen, right?
I am going to spoil the movie. In the end of the movie, the aliens show themselves, and they were so ferociously scary, and something that maybe people can relate to that they possibly have read or have seen in some holy scriptures, cough, cough, hint, hint.
Huh.
And it shocks them so much, their children leave and the whole planet explodes.
Wow. And that's called Childhood Zen? I got to write that
Childhood Zen. But the reason behind it, I know that sounded like really abrupt, but the reason behind the story was this alien race is just doing the natural causation of ending planets as their life ends, just like how plants die and come back to life, people die and then they finish their life somewhere else, if you believe that.
Right.
Well, this alien race enlighten planets. So they'll explode, and then the beings that are there or whatever can go ahead and transcend. But it's really hard to explain that to people. So these beings are like, yeah, everything's going to be fine, but we're never going to show ourselves until we think you're ready. Hopefully that made sense. I mean, that summary did not sound like I said it correctly.
Well, it's putting several thoughts in my head. One, I got to watch that now because it sounds intriguing.
It's really, I promise you, it's really good.
Yeah. One of the big things too, we'll go to the subject of advanced life forms that are potentially monitoring us long term, which is what I think. As far as humanity being ready, no, we actually we're still racist somehow. We're still separated by religions and politics and states and nations. Like, you can't even go to a football game without crazy violence in the stands. It's insanity. So then you have an advanced, and by the way, if you're exploring space and the vastness thereof, you're a unified species. You're not doing that with division. There's not enough room for that. I would have to believe that an advanced race wouldn't even need currency. Currency wouldn't make sense to them. It would just be resources and the better of the species, right?
Like in Star Trek.
I've never watched Star Trek. I'm guilty. I've never have.
It's okay. It's okay.
But I'm glad you said that. At least lets me know that someone thought about it before me, right? But I think of that, and then I think about what you said about this other movie, and the flip of the coin. Are they benign or otherwise? Yeah, I don't think we're ready. I don't think people are ready. And
I want to say that we are, and I guess more for selfish reasons, just because I really want to know the truth, and I definitely know I'm not the only one. But when it comes to being ready, I guess the question is, ready in what sense? For the government to give disclosure, for us to have actual contact with these entities, or something else entirely? What, the removal of all nations, of all borders? Are we ready for that? In some aspects, I want to say yes. And in some aspects, I want to say I do not think we're ready yet. And the biggest thing, from my understanding, for the short time I have been on Earth, is as humanity, we like to define ourselves as unique. We like to look different from our peers. We like to wear certain clothes, have our hair a certain way, classify ourselves in certain respects. And I think now more than ever, we don't like to necessarily agree with others when they try to label you. Hopefully that makes sense what I'm saying.
It does. And it's a shame.
Thank you. It is. So when it comes for the government to give us disclosure about what they already know, that, yes, I think we're ready for, because that is very, very factual. We can get our hands on it. We can get the information if it's provided, or we can file FOIA. But when it comes to removing all the borders, removing all the races, removing all the genders and everything in between, right? Becoming a lot more political, I guess, in this aspect. I don't think we're ready for that yet. So it just depends on how we define disclosure and how it's going to affect us in the future, just because we are still very egoic and we don't like to place ourselves in other people's shoes.
Isn't that a shame in the 21st century that we still behave that way? Like, I have a way of life, right? If you want a religion, humanity. And if you want a race, human. And if you want a place of origin, earth. Why is it not that simple? Blows me away when it's not that simple. I don't think the government knows nearly as much as we think they do. They might know a lot more than we do in some senses. But for the big picture, I don't think they know everything. I think let's say humanity one day comes together, we unite, and we're not killing each other over stupid reasons. I think that the government wouldn't be the first ones like, all right, listen, here's what's going on. I think they would just be here. Because look at the Tic Tac, for instance. David Fravor's account for that. How do we stop them? And the answer is we don't. So I don't know. It's tough. It's really tough. And the way you phrased it was phrased beautifully. It's a scary thought that we're still behaving this way in the 21st century. It's just, I don't know. It really upsets me. I would hope we could take that next step, if not even for the disclosure of extraterrestrial life, to have our species survive and make it to the next step. If we're going to be interplanetary, I assure you, Elon Musk, when he's going to Mars to set up shop, he's not going to sit there and take the resumes of people, and he's not going to care about your race. He's not going to care about your religion or politics. What can you contribute to this population on Mars? Because none of those other things are going to apply at all.
You're right. You're right. Oh, in that point in time, or even when it comes to just straight up survival, that's when your perspectives shift, and that's when things begin to strip away and you don't care about anything else except surviving, eating, sleeping, shelter, clothing. That's all that matters. And that's all that, I guess, should still matter.
Right.
And it does for many, but we like to add all these extra layers of like, oh, I need a really comfortable bed. I need to have this many threads on my bed sheets. This, that, and the other.
But there's no Nikes on Mars? What? I can't go. Forget it. Because that, if I'm going to be honest, if there's no Nikes on Mars, Elon, I'm not going. So.
And he'll leave you on Earth. He's like, fine, I don't need you anyway.
Yeah, guess I'm going to blow up here, but I need my Nikes. So.
Oh, geez.
It's the truth. Well, but, Cristina, let me ask you. I'm sorry. I something I've been meaning to ask you. I have to.
Go for it.
You'd spoken to Lue Elizondo.
Yes.
I watched the interview with you and him, I can't help but to feel like he is holding back so bad. And you could tell, I know why. I know the reason why. He's under oath. I get that. I respect it. But you could tell. You could see in his eyes, like, oh, I just want to say it. You get that impression from him?
He's a man that's been in the field for a very, very long time. He's very vaguely because he's done hundreds of interviews. This man is literally, wow, he's insane. He's done hundreds of interviews, and he's kind of very briefly or vaguely gone over of things that he has encountered. And it seems like, based off of his wording, he's encountered some really, really bizarre, crazy things that he thinks, and maybe the government thinks, that we're just not ready to know about, because he even states, sometimes truth can be stranger than fiction. With Lue Elizondo, he's a really interesting guy. And for years, people in the UFO world were like, we want someone from the government to be on our side, to fight for us, to tell us what's going on. And then we got Lue Elizondo. And then you have you have two separate camps. You have one that's like, he's totally a disinfo agent. I can't believe he's a part of the government. We don't want him. And then you have the other camp that's like, yes, this is exactly what we asked for. Someone from the government to be on our side, to have our backs, and to push for disclosure. And he's kind of in the middle, and he's like, yeah, guys, I'm just here. I'm just here to
poor
help.
guy, man.
What's going on? And he even posted a Twitter post, was it yesterday or was it today? It was recent, where he said, big things are happening for all the haters that are out there.
I did see that.
Some seats for you to jump on the bandwagon. And all I can say is he is the guy that it doesn't care how many followers you have, 10 or 100,000 on any platform. He will speak to whoever wants to have a conversation with him. Now, there are a lot of people that state he doesn't really answer the questions, like, why are you guys talking to him? Well, yes, he is under oath. Yes, he still has to follow NDA. But the biggest thing for me is that nobody yet, and please correct me if I'm wrong, nobody yet has caught him in a lie. If he was really an agent that was telling all these lies, at some point in time, you're going to trip up. And it's been, 2-3 years?
Yeah.
And no one's caught him yet. That's insane. It can mean one or two things. Either one, he's an insanely amazing liar, or two, he's telling the truth and he's staying loyal to the country and to the citizens of the United States.
Sure. Listen, I believe everything he says. I'll tell you why. I read people pretty well. I'm a pretty good judge of person. What I see in his face is a number of things. One, I know, and like I was telling you earlier, I feel like he wants to say so much more, but he just can't. He's under oath. Two, you could see in his face, he just doesn't really care what people think. He's not affected by the opinions of others, period. And he's got that kind of character where when he's speaking, it's more like a presentation, right? He's speaking to you verbatim what he's learned and to the best of his ability anyway, or what he can speak of anyhow. I think he's very genuine. I'm excited to see what he does and what he's going to say in the future. Because I know I'm predicting 2022, somewhere around June, our next spoon feed's coming, right? Because that's the last disclosure was a really safe one. They told us pretty much what we knew already, but now they're just saying, well, we're admitting that we know about them and we don't know what they are. I mean, that was a pretty safe thing to do. But that's spoon one of many spoons from the bowl that we're eating from. Like, remember, we're people. And part of the problem with people is, for instance, if you told God-fearing Christians there was no God, Tom would be like, well, now I could just kill John next door because I'd never liked him, or I could just leave my wife. I'm not going to go to hell for this. I understand control. I get it because people are crazy, period, so I get the control. The tough part of it all is going to be what they can say. And I feel bad for Lue in a way because he came out, he spoke about what he did. The pressure's on him. And like you said, there's these camps, right? He is great or he isn't great. I think people need to self-evaluate before casting these stones. Really, see what it is he's trying to do. He's just trying to be forward to the best that he can. As far as the misinformation camp people, you could see those people. They don't like I saw some videos with some of these alleged government people and some of them that were in the Air Force, and you could just see it on them. You could see it in their face. That's their job is to be deceptive. So there's no question in that for me. So I don't know, Cristina, what do you think in the next year? What's your prediction?
I mean, what's happened in 2021, I could have never expected. I'm so grateful for all the things that have happened, even for getting a more permanent UAP office in the Pentagon. I did not expect that to happen. And the fact that it is, even though it's kind of wishy-washy right now of exactly what they're doing, it's still a step forward. So what's going to happen in 2022?
Sky's the limit.
I have no idea. The sky is the limit. I'm looking forward to another really intense year to UAP disclosure, UAP transparency, whatever you want to say. I don't think we'll be getting disclosure anytime soon, but stepping across those stones and going through the bridge to the other side is becoming a lot closer than ever before. I truly believe that.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think again, to reiterate what I said earlier, because private industry is going up into space now, I think they have to speed up that process because it's a matter. Look, William Shatner went up, and I love William Shatner. Right? Maybe I didn't know him from Star Trek. I know him as Denny Crane from Boston Legal, but I like the guy. And So if Bezos and Elon and these guys are putting private people up there, and, you know, I think Virgin's on it too. I don't think they're going to hold their tongue. I think the government's like, all right, we really got to step up, because now Bezos is sending rockets up with just civilians, and civilians aren't sworn on an oath. You know, so.
No, and the big thing is that disclosure is going to be coming from the people, from the public. I don't think it'll be coming from the government, and these private industries or even these civilians having these amazing experiences going into space, or for those that are experiencers, those that are contactees, those are the people that are going to be bringing in disclosure. It's not going to be written on paper and then stamped by the Pentagon being like, yep, here you guys go, what you always asked for. Like,
I agree.
This is not going to happen. It's going to be from us.
And I made a promise to myself in the 2022 year, I'm going to interview more people, of experiencers anyway. I've been speaking to a lot of researchers who've had experience, but now I want to hear the other side of the coin. I don't want to be quick to say, well, you know, I don't know. Well, I'm going to go through that. Well, before we close, Cristina, is there anything you want to add?
Thank you so much for having me on the show. I've had a lot of fun.
Indeed. Same, Cristina. We'll talk soon, girl.
All righty.